So, Akame Ga Kill. It's probably one of the closest things to a guilty pleasure anime for me. Even as I'm recording this, to my left, I have a poster of Akame Ga Kill. This is on a mat, play like card game play mat with Leone on it, and I don't even think I want to go that far to say it's a guilty pleasure for me, though. It's an anime that I simultaneously trash talk and love at the same time. It has a solid concept, this band of assassins called Night Raid who work in the shadows to help topple a corrupt empire where death is a certainty due to the immense power of ancient armaments they wield called Imperial Arms. And they're not heroes, just assassins getting the job done. At least, that's what they'd really like you to think. From the very first episode, one point is supposed to stand out. These people aren't heroes, they're assassins, murderers no matter which way you look at it. But if that's the case, then why the hell is everything they do exactly what a hero would do? Our first introduction to Night Raid is fairly decent. Tatsumi, our kind of maybe main character, gets taken in for the night by a wealthy family as they find him sleeping on the streets, and it's just not bearable for him to be out there alone. They have to help him. And the rest of our main characters show up and kind of start murdering this nice family with no explanation, and it even starts with one of the family members legitimately getting cut in half, while the rest of Night Raid waits, perched and ready, standing in front of a red moon. And okay, this is starting off pretty good. That's not generally how you'd introduce heroes. But it doesn't last long when we find out this nice, happy family likes to kidnap strangers off the street and torture them for fun. Tatsumi finds his lost friends in there, kills the last member of the family, and the scene is honestly pretty fucked, ignoring the fact that Tatsumi's friends were honestly just some no development or little development throwaway motivation death characters. It sets the stage for a gruesome and messed up anime where the good guys are chopping people in half left and right, and that works for this theme. But the not hero shit ends about there. How are these not supposed to be the heroes when you immediately contrast and put them against a family who takes in homeless people to kill them for fun? Akame, one of Night Raid, and our other possibly maybe main character, even spares Tatsumi at first when he gets in their way, saying, "You're not a target." If she wasn't a hero, wouldn't she just be killing him anyway to get the mission done? The enemies they face are constantly underdeveloped, exaggerated villains. They take jobs killing random bad guys. They all fight for some internal drive to change the world for better. Let's get one thing straight. These guys are heroes. And this is something really disappointing about the series to me. They introduced this theme and never actually developed it. Imagine if one of the members of Night Raid was just a straight up batshit crazy, cold-blooded killer. They just killed for fun and they were a necessary evil to keep around because they were damn good at it. There's some tension with the others and they manage to keep them mostly under control, but they accept it and move on because it's what needs to be done. Or maybe one of them gets way too into it, who believes they're so right that anyone opposing them is fit to be killed on the spot, but they're really helping in fights, so the team has to put up with it. So, with those points in mind, let's step back and look at some of the villains. Some of the minor ones are diamonds in the rough. Zanku was pretty involving and interesting, and I generally liked his fight and him in general as a villain, and Kurame was almost a decent character, but most of them are throwaways. There's some, good attempts in there like Dr. Stylish, but he just had a weak death and he ended up being such an exaggeration. And anyway, let's talk about one of the villains I did really like, Seiryu. Holy fucking shit, Seiryu. She is exactly what the show needed more of. This in-your-face contrast of a typical cute anime girl and some fucked up sense of raw, absolute justice instilled in her by some pretty terrible guys who she refused to see any evil in. Her mentors are an Imperial officer who frames people to get them executed, a mad doctor who uses her as a canvas to test his weird internal weapons, which she thanks him for, and we never see her dad, but he left enough of a mark on her for her to cry armless on the battlefield just after murdering someone and ask if he was proud. Well, crying. I already said crying, but it's really fucked up. And that's all outside of when she fights. She has an imperial arms that mirrors her pretty well, this cute, dorky looking little dog thing, Kuro, that can turn into a demon on command, and for her to fight, it bites off her arms to reveal the weapon she has hidden within her body, which ranges from a few guns to a rocket that would put NASA to shame. She even has one on her throat. All of this adds some weird, creepy, almost horror-esque element to the scenes she's in, and I love it. It kept me on the edge in waiting, her fights being some of the strongest in the show, and seeing one of our heroes die in that kind of atmosphere made it even more powerful. And there were some good deaths in the show, but just that death being in such this dark atmosphere just gave it more power. It was because of her that the scene was very good. It's almost expert levels of tragedy hidden within her character, and more characters should have had that. More should have been like her. And for my favorite of them all, and possibly even extending that title to a lot of the series I've watched, we have General Esdeath. And most people are probably gonna hate me for that, but I love her. And putting my certain affinities for her aside, I genuinely think that she's a super strong force for the show. She's one of the few villains that we actually see as strong rather than just getting told they are. There's a lot of villains, especially characters like Budo, who we see him, in like episode 20 finally after being told he's so strong, but and he definitely is, like, he physically, like, they did a good job of just, he's large, in charge, that kind of thing, but it's just 20 episodes of being told he's strong, whereas from day one of her introduction, we immediately see the power of her character. She goes to fight the Northern Army, which should have taken like about a year, they say, and she did it in a few days. And their general, who was supposed to be this, super tough, he led the revolution, and everyone fought for him with no question whatsoever. We finally see him, and he's naked on a leash, licking her boots in front of Esdeath's commanders before she offs him with a swift kick to the head. That's instant power. That's an intro that says, get ready for some fucked up shit, the things that made Akame Ga Kill good. It's this weird tension of this, she's definitely like evil, and it comes out, it just feels like a very strong presence. It's a good setup. We learn of and see her care for nothing but war as she immediately gives away her massive, rewards for fighting these battles. Flashbacks of her seeding revolution into their society so that she'd have another war to fight. Her constant and unnerving focus on torture, one of her only hobbies, something that she weaves into the conversation at every chance. And one of the best details, she's smiling through all of it, every battle, every war. We physically see the fun she's having. Amidst all this power, she reveals a want for love with a list specific enough to make the customers we get at Starbucks even be shocked. But our main man Tatsumi ends up fitting all of her criteria, and the first thing she does upon realizing this, puts him on a leash and takes him the fuck away. And this is where we start to see a different side of her. In contrast to the Ice Queen we were introduced to, we see a blushing and nervous woman, and most importantly, reasonable. We learn her guiding principle is the weak die and the strong survive. If someone dies, they weren't strong enough. It's unreasonable to a huge extent, ignoring so many factors other than pure raw strength, the only thing important to her. But she gets into a bed with a guy for the first time, and she says they can take it slow, that they need to learn each other and grow together, that it'll take time, but they'll get there. Watching it, I was honestly shocked at how understanding and reasonable she came off as. It makes her intriguing, and I wanted to know where this came from and why, if she was like this about anything else. And it just really worked. And there are some other moments where they have her randomly show compassion that felt a little kind of off for her character, given it was supposed to be focused on one person, but they kind of weave it into her wanting her troops to really genuinely respect her and some stuff there, but those weren't the strongest points we're focusing on here. But shit ends up hitting the fan as Tatsumi escapes her grasp, and her somewhat puppy love turns darker from a want to have him to a need to have him to needing to own him as hers only forever. She breaks her calm demeanor into somewhat of a rage when interrupted once they reunite. When we see her not smiling, it's when she's alone thinking of him. This was some good development that they actually ended up missing out on by kind of drawing it out too long. Eventually she turns to thinking, fate will bring us together again, which is honestly probably one of the quickest times I've ever said, fuck this. She's still great, don't get me wrong, but they really missed the mark on this point. She finally found something she couldn't have. Why didn't this make her more insane? We know it's in there, we know it's lurking. But it took too long to rise up. She should have fallen deeper into it, become even more bloodthirsty, smiling even more mad, just little details to show the escalation to when it finally boiled over. And eventually it does. In the final episode, we see her reaction to Tatsumi's death. He was weak, so he died. But why does it hurt? Again, she never hurts, never feels, but now she is. And with the revolution over and the Empire truly fallen at this point, she turns on all sides, kills her own troops, and says she'll start another war to fulfill her desires. It all culminates as she finally finds an even match in combat, all the while laughing and enjoying herself, even saying it's getting fun as she cuts off her own arm. She starts using her blood from this cut off bloody stump as a weapon, and she's still smiling the whole time. The final battle is actually amazing and made the past 23 episodes feel worth it. Her death is as she goes and freezes herself with Tatsumi's body, but we'll look past that for our purposes here. So, remember those two examples I gave of what one of the main characters should have been like? Yeah, I'm actually saying that either Seiryu or Esdeath should have been a hero. They're both deeply interesting and entertaining, even more so than some of the Night Raid members. They each bring a darker aspect with their presence, something the anime wanted to do, but mostly lacked on. We're not heroes, but these two should have been, because they aren't, because they're both deeply fucked up, dark, frightening, because they bring the strongest points of the show. They fight dirty and get the job done for their own reasons or ideals, not for a greater good. I wanted to see a band of assassins who felt the weight of their job in every fight, the mental toll that killing for work would take on them, something we never saw, because no matter what they say, they're heroes. And I love Night Raid. It's a lovable, quirky team, and despite its failings, there were some powerful moments and deaths from their side as well. But it could have been so much more. And honestly, it feels like there might have just been too many members. You know, they took a lot of time to try and, each one of them had a bit of a backstory episode. They had to exaggerate their personalities a bit to, make us be able to relate to them more early on, where mine started as this complete exaggeration, although she did develop into a genuine badass. And then they ruined her character at the end by making it into I love a boy instead of letting her be the badass she became. Like, the actual growth got ruined there, and Tatsumi's just standard, generic anime protagonist number 3 from everything he says and does. His growth is also just generic in that he moves from doing nothing to actually being a force, which again, it's good development, but it's stock standard. But getting back to the plot, with a few minutes left as we're wrapping things up in the final episode, I was about to forget about this whole idea of we're not heroes from episode 1. I figured they had an idea and just couldn't make it work, and moved on. I'm harping too much on it. With the final scene, we see Akame leave, a soldier with no cause and no purpose, moving on to keep fighting to find a reason. It feels accomplished. She took out the most powerful human alive and achieved their goal. But it also felt so empty. The team is all dead but her and Najinda, and she leaves and just takes the blame for all the Night Raid shit. It was actually a good ending, leaving that unsatisfactory taste I wanted from such a dark idea. And then, the random narrator we heard a total of 2 times prior comes on to send us out, claiming Night Raid was remembered as a band of no-goods, and eventually forgotten. And this is where I say, fuck off. You brought this concept up in episode 1 and abandoned it, did nothing with it for 23 episodes, had a perfectly good ending, and then slathered it up in some bullshit that we know isn't true. Because no matter what you say, every single member of Night Raid was a hero, not just at heart, but in everything they did. And that's fine. If you want to make a show about a band of heroes who, give up everything it takes to fulfill the cause and topple this empire, that's fine. But if you wanted to do something more powerful, if you wanted to make a point like that, then you had 2 characters who damn well should have been on the other side for that. They're They bring what the show wanted to do, what that point needed. And if you're gonna bring it back up again at the end, deliver on it with one of these two. Akame Ga Kill, I really do love you. You had some great ideas, some epic moments, and it almost just felt like you were a little too ambitious. You're one of my guilty pleasures, but you really were lacking.